Hey guys, Wayback Rewind here. The recent lunar eclipse had me trying to decide which camera to use. Turns out, my Panasonic FZ300 is still one of the best choices. Its constant aperture, full range, f2.8, and 24x zoom lens makes it ideal for this. I'm going to show you all about it, coming up next, here on Wayback Rewind. I bought the FZ300 back in 2015. It's been sold brand new ever since then and is finally out of production. But even today, it is arguably my nicest camera. I had taken pictures with this camera of the moon before, so I knew that it could zoom in enough to get very detailed pictures of the moon. But how would it fare during the eclipse? It turns out the weather in Houston was not very good for an eclipse. It was very cloudy, and there were very brief patches where the clouds would open up, so I wasn't quite sure if this was going to work tonight. My original intention was to use multiple cameras and do a comparison of which cameras could take the best pictures of an eclipse. But due to the clouds, I was having a very difficult time trying to line up the camera with the moon, and I eventually gave up trying to use multiple cameras, and I ended up just using the FZ300 on its own individual tripod. But the clouds kept getting progressively worse and worse in Houston. At the point that I was taking this picture, I couldn't see a thing. Luckily, this camera has a 1292 millimeter effective zoom. And I just sat there waiting for the clouds to open up. And they did. So this was at the very beginning of the eclipse. And then you can see in real time the clouds moving across the face of the moon. Every video in here is in real time, and the motion that you see of the moon itself is the apparent motion caused by the rotation of the Earth. If you were to look down on the Earth in the moon system, the Earth would be rotating in a counterclockwise direction, and the moon would be rotating in that same direction. But because the Earth is rotating so much faster, the apparent motion of the moon in the sky is in the opposite direction from east to west, just like every other object in the night sky. The phases of the moon that we're all familiar with are caused by one half of the moon being lit at all times and how that half is presented to us here on the Earth. When it's directly between us and the sun, we see a new moon. About 7 days later, when the moon is perpendicular to the Earth and the sun, we call that the first quarter. And here's where it gets interesting. As the Earth continues to orbit around the sun and the moon orbits the Earth, they eventually get into a three-body alignment that we call syzygy. And this is also where you get the full moon, and this is also where the lunar eclipse occurs. Now you might be wondering why we don't get a lunar eclipse every month. And that is because the Earth and the moon and the sun are not exactly in the same plane. The moon's orbit around the Earth is slightly tilted with respect to the Earth's orbit around the sun, so most of the times when you get a full moon, it's above or below the Earth's shadow. But about twice a year, the moon will move into the Earth's shadow and it's fully eclipsed. Interestingly enough, this same event as viewed from the moon would be a solar eclipse, and for the first time ever, the Blue Ghost spacecraft on the moon photographed a solar eclipse from the moon. But back here on Earth, in the cloudy skies of Texas, let's get back to the lunar eclipse as viewed from the Earth through the clouds as best as I could capture it with the Panasonic Lumix FZ300.